The rhythmic sound of heels echoed down the pristine white hallway of the research facility. Elena Vargas walked briskly toward the conference room while reviewing the final report of her new drug development project. The pearl necklace around her neck caught the fluorescent light with a subtle glow. It was a precious gift from her mother, one she always wore during important moments. "Good morning, Director Vargas," several young researchers greeted her as she passed. Elena responded with a warm smile while glancing into the softly lit laboratory. The research and development division she led was entering the final phase of an innovative cancer treatment. "Johnson, how did the cell culture results turn out last night?" "They exceeded our expectations. Please take a look at this," a young lab technician replied with clear excitement, handing her his tablet. Elena studied the graphs on the screen and nodded with satisfaction. The success of this project would have an enormous impact on the pharmaceutical industry. "Excellent. At this rate, we should be ready for clinical trials next month. The side effects are far lower than we anticipated. Everything is thanks to your guidance, Director Vargas." The atmosphere in the laboratory was filled with energy. In the 2 years since Elena had become division head, the team's performance had improved steadily. Her calm judgment and precise leadership had earned the complete trust of the young researchers. At that moment, her phone vibrated discreetly. The screen showed an incoming call from the wedding planner. Elena hesitated for a second before answering. "Vargas speaking. Excuse the disturbance, but regarding tomorrow's final meeting, Miss Langford's mother has made a special request." Elena felt a slight dizziness. The wedding preparations were also reaching their final stages. 2 months earlier, her life had taken an unexpected turn when she met Matteo Langford. He had visited the research facility as part of a real estate inspection. His chivalry, intelligent conversation, and polished appearance had captivated her instantly. Barely 2 months later, she had accepted his proposal. However, one event had cast a dark shadow over that decision. It was the day she met Matteo's mother, Sophia Langford. In a private room of a luxury restaurant, Sophia had received her wearing an impeccable Chanel outfit and heavy makeup attempting to hide her age. Her gaze slid over Elena with a mixture of scrutiny and disdain. "Oh, so you're a researcher. It's fine for women to work, I suppose. But in our family, wives are expected to take care of the home, wear luxury brands, and always look perfectly put together." She smiled tensely as her eyes scanned Elena from head to toe, as if calculating her worth. "Career women shouldn't have families. That's my belief. But since Matteo chose you, I suppose I'll have to turn a blind eye given the world we live in." Beside her, Matteo only offered an awkward smile and said nothing. In that moment, Elena understood the reality that awaited her. Those words left a deep scar in her heart, but she did not let it affect her. With a serene expression, she simply smiled and replied, "You are absolutely right, Mrs. Langford. I will do my best to be a good wife from now on." Sophia never understood the true hidden meaning behind those words. On the morning of the wedding, Elena awoke in complete calm. Outside, the city of Boston glowed under the autumn sun. The maple leaves were as vibrant as the blush on a bride's cheeks. She sat at her vanity and took her usual pearl necklace. "Ready?" her mother, Carmen, asked, entering the room behind her. Her father, Javier Vargas, had been watching her for the past 6 months with a mixture of concern and confidence in what was about to happen. Elena smiled. "Yes, everything is perfect." She looked at her father through the mirror and answered with certainty. Her pearl necklace sparkled in the morning light. Everything was going according to plan. The grand ballroom of the hotel was illuminated by the soft afternoon autumn light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The golden autumn foliage reflected on the Charles River. More than 200 guests from Boston high society sat elegantly among classic European furnishings. Golden champagne bubbles filled glass after glass while a string quartet enhanced the sophisticated atmosphere. Sophia Langford, wearing the latest Dior dress and an imposing diamond necklace, sat proudly at the main table. Around her, several influential figures of society gathered, listening attentively. "My son will finally have a proper family," she said with a refined smile. "His partner works at some research center, I believe. Well, I suppose that's how times are now." A murmur of contained laughter ran through the group. Sophia smiled with satisfaction. "But naturally, she will leave her job after the marriage. That is what is expected, of course." At that moment, the master of ceremonies stood up with the microphone. "And now we would like to hear a few words from the groom's mother." Sophia rose with a wide smile. She elegantly raised her champagne glass and scanned the room. Her eyes stopped at the main table where the couple sat. Elena held her gaze with a serene smile. Thank you all for joining us today to celebrate the wedding of my son Matteo. Sophia began in her rehearsed tone. The Langford family has contributed to Boston's development for 3 generations. It gives me immense joy to welcome a new member to our distinguished family. She paused, and her expression changed subtly. A hint of mockery appeared at the corners of her lips. And I have another wonderful announcement to make today, she said in a louder tone, looking directly at Elena. Finally, we have an excellent maid at home. Please feel free to make use of her services. Laughter spread among the high society guests as if they had witnessed a clever joke. Even Matteo smiled slightly at his mother's words. But Elena's expression did not change. In complete silence, she took her champagne glass and raised it with elegance. Her deep blue dress highlighted her distinguished presence more than ever. Oh, Elena dear, it's just a joke, don't take it so seriously, Sophia said with a triumphant smile. Suddenly there was movement near the entrance. Elena's parents stood up slowly. The solemn expression on Javier Vargas's marked features and imposing posture made the air in the room feel denser. Carmen stood beside him, looking at her daughter with warmth. And now for the real surprise, Javier announced in a firm voice. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The color drained from Sophia's face. Matteo froze, not understanding what was happening. The string quartet stopped playing. Even the sound of champagne bubbles seemed to pause. More than 200 pairs of eyes turned simultaneously toward Javier Vargas. The presence of the CEO of Boston's most important pharmaceutical company dominated the room completely. Elena stood up calmly. Her pearl necklace sparkled with the light of the sunset. There were no more doubts in her gaze. She was ready to witness every second of the true surprise about to unfold. The expensive champagne glasses on the tables vibrated slightly, as if announcing the earthquake that was coming. The atmosphere in the room grew heavy and tense, like the calm before a storm. Javier Vargas took the microphone slowly. His bearing exuded the authority of a global pharmaceutical leader. Thank you all for joining us today at the wedding of my beloved daughter, Elena. A restless murmur swept through the room. Sophia's face grew even paler. Elena Vargas is not just Elena Vargas. Javier's voice resonated with undeniable weight. She is the head of the Research and Development Division at Vargas Group and our next vice president. Who will assume the role next month? Carmen stood up with a calm smile and positioned herself beside her husband. And for those in Langford Real Estate, Javier continued, she is also your partner in the $100 million development project. The room exploded into chaos. Boston's elite expressed their shock in whispers and incredulous glances. Sophia nearly collapsed into her chair, throwing a pleading look at her son. Matteo did not know how to react. We have been observing all of this as a social experiment to see how you would treat our daughter under the surname Vargas, Javier said with a brief pause. And today, it seems we have our answer. Elena stood up with grace. Her deep blue wedding dress shone under the twilight light. There was no longer any trace of false modesty in her expression. Only the authority of a natural leader. Her voice rang clear and firm in the silent room. Let me introduce myself not as your servant, but as the person who holds the fate of your company in her hands. The sound of a champagne glass shattering against the marble floor interrupted the air. Sophia had dropped it. The broken crystal on the ground symbolized the collapse of her pride. This is a misunderstanding, Sophia cried out, her voice trembling. It was supposed to be a joke. Everyone was laughing. Yes, Elena replied calmly, and that laughter is exactly what we found problematic. From the corners of the room, some guests were already checking their phones. The Boston Globe had begun reporting the incident. Javier took the floor again with a practical tone. From today, all new development contracts with Langford Real Estate are cancelled. Furthermore, we will review all existing business relationships. The words weighed like a sentence. Executives from Langford Real Estate stood up abruptly with phones in hand. Decades of corporate alliances were crumbling before their eyes. Wait, please wait. For the first time, Matteo raised his voice. His handsome face was now distorted by fear. I had nothing to do with my mother's behavior. Elena looked at him coldly. You have your share of responsibility, Matteo. He fell silent. His silence illustrated better than any words his own indecision and moral negligence. The guests began rising from their seats. In high society, the rules were unforgiving. No one wanted to be near a family in decline. Elena addressed everyone with her head held high. Ladies and gentlemen, what has happened today is not only a personal matter. She paused. It is a warning. Her gaze swept the room. A warning against the discriminatory values that still persist in our society and against the prejudices that lurk beneath the surface of so-called gentlemen and ladies of high society. Many of the guests lowered their eyes. The guilt weighed on them. They had laughed along with Sophia. Now reality struck them. Carmen approached silently and placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. You made the right decision. Elena nodded slightly. Sophia was slumped in her chair, her expensive makeup streaked with tears. Matteo remained paralyzed, unable to seek help from anyone. We are leaving, Javier announced firmly. Elena nodded and took one last look at the room. Luxurious decorations, costly attire, refined manners. But now the ugly reality beneath all the shine had been exposed. She turned one final time toward Sophia before leaving. Probably I would not have been a good maid. She paused, letting every word resonate in the room. But as an executive, I will consider the future of your company. That was the final blow. Sophia broke into tears. Her imposing and elegant image was destroyed. Elena left the ballroom with her head held high, flanked by her parents. 1 week after the wedding, morning sunlight filtered into the top-floor conference room of Vargas Group. Elena calmly browsed the newspaper beside the huge windows overlooking Cambridge. Suddenly the door burst open. Her secretary entered hurriedly. Miss Vargas, Mrs. Langford is here and requests to see you. Elena slowly lowered the newspaper. Send her in. Minutes later, Sophia Langford entered the room. Her former arrogance had vanished. She looked tired with minimal makeup. Though she still wore a designer suit, her posture was completely different. Miss Vargas, her voice trembled. Please, I beg you, no more sanctions. Elena looked at her calmly. Sanctions? This is simply a business decision. We have determined that partnering with companies whose values are discriminatory would significantly damage our brand image. Sophia frowned, but it was only a joke in a social setting. Elena narrowed her eyes. Don't you think discrimination in a social setting is even more malicious? Her tone hardened. How can you call humiliating someone in front of others social? Sophia opened her mouth but could not respond. Her legs trembled. She began to cry. Elena raised a hand to stop her. There is no need. I am not looking for your apology. I am looking for sincere reflection and real change. At that moment the door opened again. Matteo burst in with aggressive steps. What does all this mean? His tone was desperate. Because of you, the company, our family, everything is falling apart. Elena looked at him coldly. Are you saying you have no responsibility in this? Matteo fell silent. What my mother did was wrong. Yes, he said nervously, but your attitude was the real problem. Elena stood up calmly. Turning a blind eye to discrimination is the same as being part of it. The room fell into heavy silence. The air felt dense. The weight of truth was undeniable. Outside the glass walls, researchers in white coats moved focused on their work. Elena looked at the documents on her desk and spoke firmly. I will present our specific conditions. She took the first paper and read aloud. First, the complete resignation of the Langford Real Estate Executive Team. She paused and took the next. Second, the implementation of an anti-discrimination program within the company. Then the third. Third, the active promotion of women to leadership positions. Matteo choked. Is that all? Elena lifted her gaze. Your family is also included, of course. Her tone was icy. We cannot trust executives who silently tolerate discrimination. Sophia clung to her son's arm. Her elegant and haughty posture had disappeared. Now she looked incredibly weak. As compensation, we also demand a donation of 30% of your personal assets to a fund supporting the advancement of women in society. 30%, Sophia screamed in horror. But our lifestyle. Elena interrupted her with a cold smile. No need to worry. She leaned forward slightly. I am sure someone will hire you as domestic help. Sophia's face turned pale. Her own words had come back to haunt her. I expect your answer in 3 days. Elena sentenced. Otherwise, we will immediately cancel all transactions and take legal action. Matteo tried to say something but bit his tongue. The gentleman facade he had maintained for so long crumbled in that instant. You already know the way out. Elena pressed the button to call her secretary. This is your last chance. Make an intelligent decision. When Sophia and Matteo left the conference room, Elena stood by the window. Outside, the researchers continued working with energy. Just then she received a message from her father Javier. The board unanimously supports your decision. Elena smiled slightly. This was not revenge. It was a necessary correction against discrimination that had lasted too long. A few days later, the Langfords' response arrived. They surrendered completely. The social sections of the Boston Globe had new headlines. Langford Real Estate announces major reforms. Reflection on gender discrimination. New measures underway. Sophia Langford donates her personal fortune to a women's advancement fund. From her office window, Elena looked at the nighttime landscape of Boston. The sunset reflecting on the Charles River seemed to announce the dawn of a new era. That night she had a long-awaited call with her mother. "Do you regret anything?" Carmen's voice carried a hint of concern. Elena answered with conviction, "None." She leaned on her desk. This change was necessary, not only for her but for all women. A year later, in autumn, an important announcement was about to be made in the boardroom of Vargas Pharmaceuticals. The windows offered a panoramic view of Cambridge's autumn foliage. Elena calmly reviewed her notes before speaking. The new clinical trials have reached their final stage with results exceeding all expectations. Her voice resonated in the boardroom. The market size is estimated at several $1 billion annually. The board members murmured among themselves, impressed. The Wall Street Journal had reported on the project the previous week, calling it the biggest breakthrough in the pharmaceutical industry of the year. The research and development team led by Elena had achieved the unthinkable, developing an innovative treatment for previously intractable cancers. An outstanding achievement, Javier said, nodding with satisfaction. Your leadership has become the talk of the industry. Elena looked around the boardroom. Several female executives now occupied seats that once belonged to men who never thought they would lose their places. Their presence was proof that change was not only possible, it was inevitable. After the meeting, Elena returned to her office. The future had only just begun. That morning she was at her desk reading an article about the events of the past year. The wedding scandal had not been just passing gossip. It had shaken society, leaving a deep mark. Just then Carmen entered the office quietly. "Don't forget we have a lunch date." Elena smiled and stood up. Of course not. Her pearl necklace shone subtly on her neck as she left with her mother. On the terrace of a luxury restaurant, mother and daughter contemplated the city's bustle while conversing. Carmen took an envelope from her bag and passed it to Elena. A letter from Sophia arrived. Elena took the envelope calmly and opened it. "Dear Elena, since that day I have reflected a lot and learned more than I ever imagined. Through volunteer work at a nursing home, I understood that a person's value is not in their titles or status but in their humanity. I am deeply ashamed of my prejudices and arrogance and the harm I caused. Mateo has started from zero, working in sales at a provincial branch. He too is facing his own weaknesses. Your decision tested our family. But perhaps it was the awakening we needed. We lost many things last year, but what we gained was even more valuable. I no longer need luxuries or recognition. For the first time, I feel I understand what it means to live with dignity. Please forgive me, and thank you, Sophia Langford." Carmen observed her daughter attentively. "It's quite a sincere letter." Elena nodded in silence. Real change sometimes hurts. Through the restaurant window, they could see young women walking with firm steps, moving between campus and businesses. Elena smiled with nostalgia. "Last week I gave a lecture at Harvard Business School." She took her wine glass with elegance. The students' eyes shone with excitement. Carmen looked at her with pride. "You have become their role model." That night, Elena stood on the terrace of her home contemplating the nighttime view of Boston. The city's lights reflected on the Charles River, creating a shimmer of gold and sparkles. Her phone vibrated non-stop with cooperation proposals from pharmaceutical companies, interview requests from business magazines, and invitations to Women's Executive Association conferences. Elena Vargas had become one of the most influential figures in the business world. But her mind was already on her next goal, innovating in medical technologies, fostering more researchers, and completely transforming corporate culture. There was still much to do. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was her father. "Ready for tomorrow's board meeting?" Elena nodded without taking her eyes off the horizon. "Yes, I have a proposal for a new project." Javier looked at her with pride. "The future you seek seems clear now." Elena smiled faintly. "I am only just beginning. True transformation does not happen overnight. But once it starts, it is unstoppable." The night breeze caressed her hair. Her pearl necklace glowed softly under the moonlight. Now it was more than a simple accessory. It had become a symbol of her strength and determination. The next morning, the headlines were clear. Vargas Group revolutionizes the industry with an innovative drug. Elena Vargas, the leader transforming the business world. The executive who broke barriers and continues to challenge the status quo. In her latest interview, Elena had said firmly, "If our generation does not change the world, then who will?" And she was already on her way to doing it. The next generation will face the same challenges unless we do something about it. Transforming reality is never easy. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it demands sacrifices, but it is a necessary process. Society is changing, that is undeniable, and ensuring that change is permanent is the responsibility of each one of us. A new sun rises over Boston, illuminating the city with renewed brilliance. It seems to announce the dawn of a new era, one in which old values have been left behind. The story of Elena Vargas continues to ignite a light of hope in many hearts. And that silent but unstoppable light continues to spread even now. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.